Okay, so we continue with our TouchDesigner project with the use of leap motion. So in this one, we're going to do something a little bit more complex. So as usual, we create our project folder. I think this one is the third one. And then again, we name it without using any external resources yet. So we're going to remove except the output window. And the thing we're going to do is something we call a particle system. And in TouchDesigner, it's extremely common to use particle system, but in the original version, so it's quite a few steps we need to create the particle system and also those forces in order to modify it. And then we can also have another one which is available in the palette browser. So this one is the palette browser. Usually we remove it. So if you want to show it again, you can choose from the dialog palette browser. And under the tools item, there's one we call the particle GPU. And we can simply drag it over here to have a look at what it is. So for the particle GPU is the pre-built particle system that you can just make use of it by dragging it onto your project. And the output from this particle GPU will be at top. So we can add one dummy, that's the null top over here, and to send out our output and then eventually to our output window. So that will be something like this. So in the particle system, we can also modify some number of options. So in the tab of particles, for example, we can reduce the number of particles, and we can also changing the lifespan of the particle. So lifespan is actually how long each particle will last, and in terms of seconds. And we can also make it bigger or smaller by specifying, for example, the minimum and the maximum size of a particle. And so this is some option you can turn on and turn off. So this is the one. Okay, and there will be also other forces that you can make use of. So the default one is the gravity. There's -1 on the y-axis. In terms of the texture, you can also have different selections. So there's a few predefined one, and you can also have your custom one by putting in your color map of your own. So I choose nose for this one to work with. And then probably I just reduce the number of particles in order to make it a little bit smoother in the recording. Okay, so this is the first thing. So if you want to, you can turn on your full screen display without a border. So your particle system will be something like this. The second step is we would like to use our leap motion again. So it's come from the chop with the leap motion in order to make changes to the particle system. And then if we remember what we have just done in the last couple of exercises, so we can select the thing we're going to use. So for the leap motion, I just reduce the complexity by tracking one hand, and probably I don't need to track any finger at this moment. And for the select, I will just pick the hand and then the palm information. And with the palm information, I just make use of the position. So I just use the TX to TZ, and I will use a star as a wildcard. And the thing I pick up will be TX, TY, and TZ. So I also rename it to hit. And then I can test by putting my hand on top of my lip motion. Okay, so the next step is we would like to make some relation, excuse me, with the motion of my hand and also the particles. So the step would be for each of the TX, TY, TZ, we would like to control them individually. So each of them, I just pick up one of them. And that one will be T1. And the last one will be TZ. So the motivation of this one is I would like to use my hand to control the emitter, so the emission source of the particle system. And if you take a look at the existing one, all the particles kind of like falling down from the ceiling. And instead of falling down from the ceiling, actually you can put one option, there's an input with an 3D operator or 3D object SOP over here, such that that can be the center of emission. So we can try, for example, from SOP, a sphere. And I can make the sphere a little bit smaller, like 0.1 size of the radius in the 3 dimension. Okay, and then to simplify, I can also use polygon rather than mesh. And next step is I can put a transform over here. So the reason of using the transform is I'm going to change the position of the emitter a while later. So I can just connect it back to the SOP over here. And then in the particle, you can also click on here for the reset. At the moment, you can notice like the particle more or less coming out from the center of your screen. That is the center, which is defined by this sphere. Okay, so the next step will be how we are going to make this TX, TY, TZ in a way to control the transform, which also have translate X, Y, Z in order to have such kind of like changing the position of the particle system. And the next step will be the number over here when you move your hand, so you can see that the number is pretty small. And in order to relate it to the transform in the 3D space, so we might need to add some mathematical calculations. So I used 3 of them. And the reason of using 3 of them instead of just one, that we may have a chance to have 3 different formula in order to multiply or add or minus something in order to get the proper position. And especially the y dimension, because the y dimension only give you like the positive number, while the x and the z, they may have a chance to have negative number. Okay, so I have actually tested out a few formula for the tx, dy, and tz, so I'll just use the one I have tried out. But depending on where you place your lip motion, you might end up with different number. So for the tx, I try to multiply it by around 7.5, and which is more or less the same for the tz. And for the ty is a little bit tricky because it's only using like the positive number, and your screen for the translate actually come with positive and negative. So in this case, I have tried out multiplying by around 10 and then minus a number around 3 will give the result that I may want to have. Okay, and in order to play safe, you can also add one more null chop for each of them. Okay, so the last step will be you can relate this to the transform over here. So we turn on the real active for the tx, ty, tz in the null, and then drag individually for tx and then ty, and then finally tz. Okay, and the next step is you can try out with your hand. So you put your lip motion properly somewhere in front of the keyboard, and then you can move your hand around. So the result will be something like this. Okay, and if you want to, you can combine with your own image. For example, like in a video device in, and then you can flip it horizontally to have your mirror image. And the final step, you can do a composite to combine your own image. So I disconnect the particle system from the output window first, and then send it over here, and then use it back to the output window. Okay, so for the multiply, probably you see nothing, and then you might be using like over or under in order to get thing out of your. It's probably like over, yes. see. Yes, under. Okay, so after you put the under in the operator, you can also have a look at the result in the perform window to see whether this is what you want to do. So this is something you can sing along, of course, with the let it go. Of course, this is what you want to do. And the other thing, if you would like to have more of the particles, so there are some rendering tips that you can also have a look. And at this moment, because of the transparency, this has some form of depth detection. So you can also compose it in without a depth test. So in this case, probably help you with a little bit with your performance. So in this, so you might have this form of operation to play around with some music. And so that's it. That is the simple exercise. But if you want to have the image a little bit more visible, so you can of course change your background. So I can insert one the channel mix that we have done before in my video image. So I can make a little bit dimmer for the red and also the green, and leave the blue channel a little bit with full capacity. And the result, the overall image will be dimmer. And you can now try out a lot more visible of your snowflake and the let it go effect. Okay, so this is what we can play with the leap motion and the pre-built particle system in TouchDesigner.